things today before we get out of here. The first one concerns Javier Milei. I guess a little bit of good news for everyone. And then we're going to talk about this ad that Ontario, Canada was running. I guess is playing during the World Series or was playing that Trump got really upset about. I'm going to play that ad, which Trump speculated was AI. It's not AI. It's just some clips of Ronald Reagan talking about tariffs. And he's super upset about that. I'm going to play the ad. I'm going to play the full, most of the clip from Ronald Reagan to give a little bit more context, and we'll talk about on that. The first part, the good news, as long as you're someone who supports what Javier Milei has been doing, or most of what Javier Milei has been doing down there in Argentina. They had a big election over the weekend, and his party won big in the Congress. One of the hurdles he's been trying to get over is that his party did not have enough representation in their Congress to be able to get some of the things done that he wanted to get done. I am actually asking, this is a real question right now. I see a lot of libertarians who are very supportive of Milei, and I see a lot of libertarians who are very not supportive of Milei. I don't pay enough attention to the entire situation to know all of the bad things that I'm not supposed to like about Milei. I don't know if it's the Israel thing or if it's some bailouts, maybe the IMF bailouts, maybe $20 billion currency swap from the U.S. government. Maybe it's stuff like that. The soybean stuff. I know people are mad about that whole thing. That's one too. I don't fault Argentina for selling their soybeans. I can't tell them that I don't think they should sell their soybeans to a country that we want to sell our soybeans to. So I can't tell them that. A lot of people very upset about like the U.S. bailout of Argentina. I like on a very insanely strict libertarian stance, I would say, yeah, I'm against that because we shouldn't have this part of our government that does these things in the first place. And so I don't support it because my libertarian government would not have branches of that government that would be able to do these kinds of things. And so I'd be upset about that. And then maybe Milei taking that from like a branch of government he says shouldn't exist could be hypocritical for him. The $20 billion, it's morphed into $40 billion bailout that we've done for them. Just like on being very particular about the truth behind that, it really is a $20 billion bailout that we did for Argentina. And that $20 billion quote bailout is a currency swap. It's not like a traditional bailout where we give them a bunch of money and then we either hope that they're going to be able to give it back or we never asked them to give it back. It was a currency swap where they gave us Argentinian pesos in exchange for $20 billion US dollars. That's 100% collateralized bailout and redeemable bailout. So it's very different from the ones that we're used to when we talk about a bailout. So I think that that's like an important part to mention. Also, so far, not that I support our government doing this with our money. So far, it's been a good trade because the value of the peso has gone up a bunch since then. So technically, we could end up making money off of it. Not that I want them doing that on my behalf, but it could end up being a good trade. The other $20 billion that makes it this $40 billion bailout is Trump essentially saying he's going to get private banks and other sovereign wealth funds to invest in Argentina. Like that's him saying like, I'm going to try to get you guys another $20 billion. But that's not $20 billion from the US. That's him saying, hey, I'm going to talk to some people that I know and I'm going to try and get them to give you guys $20 billion. That has kind of morphed into that 20 plus another 20 is the U.S. giving Argentina $40 billion of U.S. taxpayer dollars, which is not what happened. Like we can walk and chew gum at the same time when it comes to the facts on this. Here's a story from the Wall Street Journal. It says Javier Milei scored a decisive political win Sunday, strengthening his position in Argentina's Congress and securing a lifeline for his audacious free market revolution, backed by President Trump. Okay. At least we're doing that in other countries. That's good. The headline here from Wall Street Journal was Milei wins mandate for free market revolution in Argentina's election. With more than 99% of votes counted, Milei's Freedom Advances Party won almost 41% of the national vote, more than doubling its representation in Congress. That means his party and allies secured at least 1/3 of the seats in both chambers, the critical threshold that allows Milei to preserve his veto power and defend his sweeping decrees. It will be easier for him to have a lot of support in Congress, especially when he vetoes things and they override his veto. I think he's been trying to do a lot of good things, obviously. And is it perfect? No. Does it line up with my exact representation of an anarcho-capitalist utopia? No. Is he taking a lot of steps to move things in the right direction? Yeah. I think there's some of the difference we've seen here. Maybe he's just not perfect. Maybe he's not the anarcho-capitalist that he claims to be. Maybe he's just like a run-of-the-mill minarchist or whatever, libertarian. It's a good question to ask. Like, what does it look like when we have to actually implement these things in the real world? And while you're implementing them, you have to make sure that the people don't throw you out of power while you're trying to implement those things. And so you come in and say, yeah, every one of these things is against what I believe as an anarcho-capitalist, and so I'm going to get rid of all of these things. But what could happen there is that the people just decide that they don't like that and they throw you out. And so what I believe we've seen so far is him trying to do everything that he can in whatever steps he possibly can conceive of and trying to maintain power at the same time, because as he said, and I'll paraphrase, if we're not in power, then they're going to be in power, and we have to find a way to stay in power. I really just see a difference in like what we see is what we think a perfect government or country structure would be, and how you have to actually implement that in the real world. I'm no expert on all of the things that he has done, but we have seen inflation come down quite a bit in Argentina. It's still really bad. They're like super happy about inflation being, 5 times more than the worst inflation we've seen in 40 years. But it's a lot better for them than what they were going through. So that's a good thing. I think the poverty numbers have come down a little bit from what I can tell. They were really bad, starting at like half the country in poverty. Like that's a tough train to stop or to turn around heading that direction. And so far, I'm inclined to believe that he's trying to move things in the right direction. But I started off with like the question is, what is it that so many libertarians seem to have an issue with Javier Milei on? I honestly don't pay enough attention to it to see it. Most of the people on my X feed are pretty pro Javier Milei, and so I don't see any of the negative stuff that people complain about. I just see like, oh, look at this number. It's better than the other number. And so I'm like happy about that. Maybe some people in the live group can let me know what the thing is. Or yeah, he's not libertarian enough, I guess. He's actually in power. Like you start to feel kind of icky as a libertarian when you see someone who's in power, who's running a government. Well, can they do anything that exercises power that and still maintain their real libertarian card at the same time? Is that the case? Is that what's happening here? It might be, or there could be real things. I'm telling you, there could be real things that I don't know about that I haven't seen. Most of the critique I've seen has had to do with Israel. And I was thinking about this morning, like, I've always cared more about economics than I have about foreign policy. Foreign policy is super important, obviously. Foreign policy leads to a lot of terrible downstream economic impacts, of course, and economic policies, of course. But I have always cared more about economics than foreign policy. And I was thinking like, well, if we had a Javier Milei type running for U.S. president and they had a chance to actually win, but they were super supportive of Israel, But they were going to implement really, I'm not just talking about campaign promises. I'm saying they're really going to implement a whole bunch of like anarcho-capitalist, minarchist, whateverist that a lot of us like policies. And they were really going to try to destroy a bunch of the government and cut a bunch of the spending and, fire a bunch of the people and all that. If they were really going to do that, but they were also very supportive of Israel. I would still vote for that person because I think economics is more important than foreign policy. And at the end of the day, I just think that really affects the people in the United States a lot more. Would I like it? No, not if it meant we were still going to be supporting those wars. Not if we're still going to be taxing people's money and giving it to people in other countries, which is insane. Still insane when you just say it out loud. I don't care what. I see the cope from people like, oh, only this % of our money goes to foreign governments, and only this % of the money that goes to foreign governments goes to Israel. It's really nothing when you think about it. Well, it's still billions and billions of dollars. People get upset over agencies that had a $40 million budget, and they want to get rid of those agencies because of all the terrible things they were doing all around the world. And so it still matters, and it's still the concept that I would have to work and that any percentage of my money would get sent to other governments to do things for their goals and desires or for their people is absolutely insane. Is it not? How can anyone make an argument that that's not completely insane? But plenty of people do. And we'll get to them. We'll talk about them eventually. We'll figure out how to get this across to them. So overall, what I'll tell you is that I'm happy about the thing that's going on in Argentina. I believe many of the people who are critiques of some of the stuff that it's not perfect. It's not the exact libertarian utopian dream. So it's not going to be perfect. But are they moving in the right direction? They're absolutely moving in the right direction, in my opinion. Are they going to do things that we disagree with? Are they going to keep agencies that we disagree with? It seems like they are. But are they moving in the right direction? Absolutely. And if we were moving in like 10% of the direction that they're moving, away from their socialist government and towards whatever kind of government it is they're actually moving towards, if we were moving like 10% in that direction, it would be this massive white pill that we were talking about. We came in here voting, a lot of us came in here voting for Trump, loving the Doge cuts and loving all the talk about this corrupt government and all this money they were spending and all that. And we just wanted to move in the right direction just a little bit. And overall, I think we've continued in the wrong direction more than we've moved in the right direction. Like if you were to measure everything that's moving in the direction, and you were to say, this is how much that continued in the wrong direction, and this is how much has moved in the right direction. The stuff moving in the right direction is much smaller than the stuff in the wrong direction. Overall, we've continued in the wrong direction. So I'm saying even if we actually went in the right direction just a little bit, like a small portion of what they were moving in Argentina, it would be considered a massive win, in my opinion, for libertarians and for the free market in the U.S. So I would still like to do this, but I'm still open to hearing about the mistakes Milei has made, the things that he could be doing better, that he's not doing, that he actually could do, that he could make it through it, that he has the power to do in his government, but he has chosen not to. Maybe because he's beholden to the globalists or the Israelis or whatever it is that he is really beholden to. I'm not saying there is no list of things. I'm saying I don't know it. Let me know. Nate@goodmorningliberty.us or tag us on X @GoodAMLiberty. Let me know, or send us a message on X @GoodAMLiberty. And let me know what those things are, because I do want to know. I always want to know the truth. I don't ever want to be saying things that are based on lies or without all of the information. That's where I am on the situation right now. Overall, it's a good thing, and I'm going to start on Monday with that white pill. Now the Canada thing, I wanted to talk about this just because it's an interesting situation, especially since apparently it's ended up with higher taxes. Sorry, surcharges, as they call tariffs now these days. So that's why it's like a little bit important that American companies that are importing are going to have to pay a higher tax. Those American companies are getting things that we need here in America, or so they can build things that they're going to sell to us or that they're going to then sell to other countries or whatever. And they're going to have to pay a higher tax as a result of this situation currently with Canada running an ad that had Ronald Reagan talking over it, talking about tariffs. So it's a pretty interesting conversation. Here's Trump's post about this. Trump said Canada was caught red-handed putting up a fraudulent advertisement on Ronald Reagan's speech on tariffs. The Reagan Foundation said that they, quote, created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan. The ad misrepresents the presidential radio address and did not seek nor receive permission to use and edit the remarks. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is reviewing its legal options on this matter. The sole purpose of this fraud was Canada's hope that the United States Supreme Court will come to their rescue on tariffs that they have used for years to hurt the United States. Now, the United States is able to defend itself against high and overbearing Canadian tariffs, in parentheses it says, and those from the rest of the world as well. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs for purposes of national security and the economy, but Canada said he didn't. Their advertisement was to be taken down immediately, but they let it run last night during the World Series, knowing that it was a fraud. Because of their serious misrepresentation of the facts and hostile act, I'm increasing the tariff on Canada by 10% over and above what they are paying now. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Once again, I'm really sorry. I'm really sick today, and I found myself like getting a little wobbly and having trouble focusing on the text on the screen, trying to read this. So I'm sure I'm kind of out of it today, and I might be coming across as pretty out of it, and so I apologize for that. We're going to talk about this situation, and then we'll get out of here. Here's 1 minute ad that Ontario. It says, according to this post, they spent $75 million running this ad, and I guess it aired during the World Series. I don't watch baseball. Maybe some of you people who watch baseball saw this thing.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
There's the ad. So I've listened to the speech before by Reagan. We've probably posted it before because we've been pretty against the tariffs, and our stance on the tariffs, which, by the way, the ad itself, those are words by Ronald Reagan. There is, in fact, a speech, a radio address that he made that they took that from. It is not, in fact, AI. Those are words that Ronald Reagan said. Have they been taken out of context? They're a little bit out of context, not entirely out of context, but they are a little bit. And I'll play the actual thing from Ronald Reagan so you can hear the full thing. Here was Trump's speculating that it was AI or something, which is just kind of funny. Maybe it's just someone's age coming into play or whatever. I just don't want people to get the idea that Ronald Reagan didn't say these words. They didn't just make this up. They didn't have an AI clone Reagan's voice and say these things. He did say those things, and just coming out and saying like, "Oh, this is totally fake. Reagan never said that." Well, that's an issue. What we should discuss really is the context of why Reagan was saying that and what exactly he was talking about.
I don't know. They cheated on a commercial. Ronald Reagan loved tariffs, and they said he didn't. And I guess it was AI or something. They cheated badly. Canada got caught cheating on a commercial. Can you believe it?
Canada got caught cheating on a commercial. They lied and said that he hated tariffs, but he loved tariffs. Well, I'll just play the thing and we'll talk about some of the stuff Reagan actually said. Now, there's the full clip. Well, it's not the full clip. There's a 2-minute and 17-second clip going around that's got the most views. So I think it was posted out by Midas Touch or something, one of those big pages. And it does end at a very specific point for a reason, because the next minute he explains why they are going to do tariffs against Japan and unfair trade practices and stuff like that. So the ad that Canada ran, they only took the negative things he said about tariffs, and then they played some of the stuff over videos of closed doors on shops and stuff like that. And like these shops in these small towns, I don't think they close because of tariffs, which is like the implication they're making. They're trying to get to the heartland of America, because I'm from small town, from a couple small towns. Maybe some of you guys are too. And you see these storefronts that are gone. You have this downtown area where this person sold this specific thing. The person next to them sold this specific thing. And a lot of those went away because we just have these big box retail stores that sell all of those things. Many of them, like there was a thing called the A&P grocery store chain, and they were the biggest in the U.S. Even people said they had a monopoly, and they ended up going out of business. And it wasn't really because they didn't carry enough things or whatever. It ended up having to do with parking. Like in a situation where everyone had their own cars and they were driving everywhere, it became easier to park at the big parking lot at Walmart or whatever the other grocery store is than it was to try and find a parking spot in this downtown area where you got to parallel park in this thing. Or you got to go park way down there and then walk over to it. It just became easier to go to a place that had a big parking lot. And some places just didn't keep up with that. And it became, places like Walmart and, in that day and age, the Kmarts and all those places, they just had things for cheaper because they bought them in bulk and they had all of them in the same place, and they're making a few cents on each good, and they're able to make a lot of money, and people weren't able to keep up with that. You can argue whether or not that was a good thing or a bad thing for America. When you look back on those days of, oh, wasn't that nice? You go take your kids and you park there on the street and you go to all the places in this downtown, all these they got their nice little fronts set up and stuff in the windows and all that. It sounds really nice. There was a little bit of that in the towns I grew up in, but they were already going out at that time. I think Canada is wrong in implying that tariffs had something really to do with that, which is what they're trying to imply in the commercial. Here's Reagan's most of his clip, and I'll play the part that these people decided to cut out.
Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. Now, there are sound historical reasons for this. For those of us who lived through the Great Depression, the memory of the suffering it caused is deep and searing. And today, many economic analysts and historians argue that high tariff legislation passed back in that period, called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff, greatly deepened the Depression and prevented economic recovery. You see, at first, when someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. What eventually occurs is, first, homegrown industries start relying on government protection in the form of high tariffs. They stop competing and stop making the innovative management and technological changes they need to succeed in world markets. And then, while all this is going on...
I'll stop this because I'm really glad that he made that point Like that's a really good free market point to be making when talking about tariffs and really just any kind of protectionist legislation, whether you're trying to impose tariffs on competition from overseas, or you're giving subsidies to specific businesses. Like we've talked about this a lot, that you start to lose that competitive aspect. Like you might be saving that business, but that business loses the incentive to get better at what they're doing. Maybe there is something they could be doing to reduce the price of their goods. There is a way that they could get more efficient, or there could be an even better good that comes into the market as a response, because this is just the cheapest we can get it. And in fact, we found something else over here that could replace that and could do even better. And it would be better for everyone because our dollars would go towards the most efficient uses. And wouldn't that be the best? And so instead, when you're protecting these businesses and keeping them in business through tariffs or subsidies or what have you, you're stopping those free market incentives from occurring. And that's a really good point that we should all remember. And I wish we had someone in that office that was making those arguments. Let's play a little bit more.
Something even worse occurs. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. The result is more and more tariffs, higher and higher trade barriers, and less competition. So soon, because of the prices made artificially high by tariffs that subsidize inefficiency and poor management, people stop buying. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. The memory of all this occurring back in the 30s made me determined when I came to Washington to spare the American people the protectionist legislation that destroys prosperity. Now, it hasn't always been easy. There are those in the Congress, just as there were back in the 30s, who want to go for the quick political advantage, who risk America's prosperity for the sake of a short-term appeal to some special interest group, who forget that more than 5 million American jobs are directly tied to the foreign export business, and additional millions are tied to imports. Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well.
So that's where they stop. And I know what you're thinking. Well, doesn't it sound like they're stopping when he's about to say something else? And this has been the biggest video going around showing, oh, see, it's not a fake ad. This is what Reagan thought about tariffs. Yeah, there is more to the conversation. Let's start at what he cut out right here. Let's hear the rest of this statement.
Well, I've never forgotten those jobs, and on trade issues, by and large, we've done well. In certain select cases, like the Japanese semiconductors, we've taken steps to stop unfair practices against American products, but we've still maintained our basic long-term commitment to free trade and economic growth. So, with my meeting with Prime Minister Nakasone and the Venice Economic Summit coming up, it's terribly important not to restrict a president's options in such trade dealings with foreign governments. Unfortunately, some in the Congress are trying to do exactly that. I'll keep you informed on this dangerous legislation because it's just another form of protectionism, and I may need your help to stop it. Remember, America's jobs and growth are at stake. Until next.
So a little bit more context. You actually hear that he is talking about going after Japan because of unfair trade practices when it comes to semiconductors, and he is actually making a plea for Congress to stopping him from dealing with that situation. Now he starts off talking about how we don't just want to put tariffs on everything. That's not good, but we do need to stop some of these unfair trade practices that are occurring. That's the actual conversation that's taking place in this radio address. So that's important to note. When it comes to the tariffs, and I'll sort of end with this because it does seem like this ad was taken a bit out of context. I don't think I'm not going to speak for Reagan, obviously. I don't think Reagan would agree with the way that Canada used it. I also don't think Reagan would agree with across-the-board tariffs like what we're seeing from Trump. Our position on these tariffs has been, if they're being used as a negotiating tactic, then so be it. So far, it has not led to super high inflation We're still getting inflation. The inflation's still sitting around 3%. So it's still there. The month-over-month inflation for the last month was 0.3. Economists thought it was going to be 0.4. So it's not as much as what people are predicting. It seems like maybe the businesses are absorbing a little bit more of this than what people have predicted. They could be absorbing it because they believe it's going to be temporary, not a long-term thing that they need to adjust all their prices for. So if this is in fact a negotiation that's taking place, then so be it. What I want to see is that we do get to a world where we have more free trade. But I'm not going to say this obvious libertarian thing. The principle, of course, is free trade. I believe in that. But you do have to question, like, what are you going to do when you have someone like China who's subsidizing all their energy industries and making things so cheap that we can't compete without our government also subsidizing those industries? Like, that's a problem. And maybe you can say, well, we'll wait out China. If they want to bankrupt themselves while giving us cheap goods, then whatever, that's fine. That's sort of what Milton Friedman would say about these countries that were subsidizing their own industries. Like if they want to destroy their economy and we can get cheap goods during that time, like why not do that? I think there's maybe a little bit more nuance to that conversation. It is kind of an issue because you could have people that were working to produce those things in your country, and that would be good. But you have another country that's subsidizing it. So maybe in the long run, like 50 years down the road, everything's okay. But you're going to have a few generations going through a pretty tough time while that's occurring. So I don't know what exactly you do about that whole thing. What I want to see is that we're pushing towards a time where we can actually have free market competition in these industries. As we've stated several times, my main issue has been that it's not only the unfair trade practices that are the reason that people go to other countries for their goods. It's not only because of those trade practices or even cheap labor that car companies move to Mexico or they go to China or they go wherever else they might go. That's not the only reason. A bunch of the reason has been that we've made it too expensive to conduct business here in the U.S. And I want to see people moving towards fixing that problem. I'm fine with tackling both problems. There could be actual unfair trade practices happening, and at the same time, we are doing things to make things too expensive in the U.S. I would like to see the things tackled in the opposite order. It's not the way that we're going, but I would like to see them tackled in the opposite order because you want to get to a neutral state where you see what it should and could actually cost to produce those things in the United States. So then you can say, well, this is how much of an effect really that these unfair trade practices, which Reagan did talk about going after with tariffs, this is the actual extent that they're causing us problems. But when you have both things piled on top of each other, you can't tell, well, how many more businesses would we actually have if it weren't for all the regulations and it weren't for all of the unions and the protection for the unions making things so expensive in the U.S. Those two things are definitely causing some issues for industries that want to stay here in the U.S. for sure. And even when you decide you're going to mandate that they pay them wages or whatever, they'll just decide to use robots. It's what they're going to have to do to try and compete. There's no other way you can do it. You're going to subsidize the industries. You're going to take money from people that are producing in the economy to then subsidize the industry so they can afford to pay those people. You're just printing fake money and pushing it around, causing inflation while you're doing it and making a lot of people dependent on those things and shutting down reasons to actually get more innovative while creating those products. I think we need to tackle both at the same time. I'm seeing a whole lot of one, and maybe there's some of the other, but I'm not seeing enough of the other. Now, as maybe not to give the Trump administration an excuse, but maybe there's a little bit of an excuse. It's only October in the first year. So he's had 9 months in office. I don't think someone's going to fix all the problems in 9 months, even if you put the right people in charge of these agencies, these good, virtuous people in charge of these agencies. I don't think they're immediately going to roll back all the things that those agencies are doing. It's going to take some time. And all of us, I think, have to, if you do see them moving in that direction, realize it's going to take some time. I think I'm going to end it there because I'm starting to feel like maybe I'm going to pass out while I'm talking. And when I start to like kind of get blurry and a little woozy and I'm trying to look at the camera, like, well, if I pass out, no one's going to be here to hit the record button to end the episode. And so that's a problem. They're not able to put the episode out after that because I'm passed out. I'm not able to do anything. And so I think it's best that before I pass out, I go ahead and end this episode. We'll come back tomorrow morning with Charles Chuck Thompson. And maybe some stuff has been, the wind has been blowing some stuff from my neighbor's house over to my house. Maybe that's what's happening. So I'm going to get out of here. Make sure you guys tell a friend, family member, the children that they need to listen to Good Morning Liberty every single day of the week when they want to. Hit follow, subscribe, leave a rating and review. That tells the algorithms that people want to listen to the show. Interact with us on X. I've been posting way less because it's not real life, and I have to remind myself that it's not real life. So I've been trying to spend more time with my family and actually talking to people that are here in front of me and not getting involved in all the fights going on social media because a lot of it's not real. And but when we do post on X, come interact. Leave a comment on our YouTube videos, a like on our YouTube videos. That's really great for the algorithms as well. If you do all of those things, and I mean every single gosh darn one of them, then we'll be back here again tomorrow. Until then, have a good day and a good morning, Liberty.